Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone. In today's thrilling tale, Vampire vs. Zombies, Blood and Bone, an ancient vampire must defend his territory from an unstoppable horde of the undead. As the forces of darkness clash, blood will spill, and no one is safe. Will the vampire lord protect his realm, or will the zombie invasion claim another victim? If you love heart-pounding battles, spine-chilling horror, and epic showdowns, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the story with fellow zombie fans. Stay tuned for more Undead adventures.
The sky was a bruised shade of purple, dusk bleeding into the night. Clouds churned low, thick with the promise of rain. Beneath the canopy of trees stood an ancient castle, its silhouette sharp against the horizon, jagged spires stabbing into the heavens. In the shadow of the castle, the forest bristled with an eerie silence. Necromancer, an ancient vampire lord, stood atop the castle's highest tower, his sharp eyes scanning the treeline below. His centuries of life had given him unmatched power and the ability to detect even the faintest disturbance. Tonight, however, something felt wrong, deeply wrong. The wind carried a scent and foul, rotting flesh, something that didn't belong in his territory. With a flick of his wrist, his red cloak fluttered behind him, and he disappeared from the tower's edge, descending swiftly to the courtyard. He moved with the grace of a shadow, silent and unseen. At the gate of his castle stood Elise, his trusted second-in-command, a vampire who had served him loyally for over 200 years. "Elise," Necromancer spoke, his voice low and commanding. "The forest reeks of death." She nodded, her icy blue eyes narrowing. "I noticed it too, my lord. Something approaches, something unnatural." Necromancer stepped closer to the heavy iron gates, his hand resting on the cold metal. "Send out the scouts. I want to know what is coming." Elise bowed her head and darted into the darkness, moving faster than any human eye could track. Necromancer remained still, his senses heightened, his fangs itching at the growing tension. He could feel it, the presence of death. But this wasn't the death he knew, the kind he had mastered over centuries. This was something else. As the moments stretched into agonizing minutes, Necromancer heard the sound. It was faint at first, a low moan carried by the wind. Then it grew louder, a chorus of groans and shuffling feet. His eyes snapped to the treeline. Shadows were moving, slow, erratic shapes stumbling toward the castle. His scouts were not returning. That could only mean one thing: whatever was out there had already claimed them. Necromancer pushed open the gates and stepped into the open. The moonlight bathed him in silver, his pale skin glowing beneath it. From the edge of the forest, a figure emerged, its skin sagging, mottled with decay. A zombie. Then another appeared. And another. Dozens, no, hundreds poured from the treeline, their lifeless eyes fixed on the castle, on him. The vampire lord's lips curled in disgust. Zombies. He'd heard rumors of the rising dead, of hordes sweeping across distant lands, devouring everything in their path. But Necromancer had dismissed them as human folly. The world beyond his territory was of little concern to him. Until now. The first zombie lurched forward, its movements sluggish but determined. It let out a guttural moan as it stumbled toward him, arms outstretched. Necromancer didn't flinch. In the blink of an eye, he was beside it, his clawed hand slicing through the air. The creature's head toppled from its shoulders, the body crumpling to the ground. Yet, for every one that fell, more rose from the shadows, their numbers growing. Elise returned, her face grim. "My lord, the scouts. They're gone. We're being overrun." Necromancer clenched his fists. "These creatures are an abomination. They dare to trespass in my domain." Elise's fangs glinted in the moonlight as she bared her teeth. "What are your orders?" "We fight," Necromancer growled, his eyes blazing red. "No corpse shall set foot in my castle." Elise nodded, drawing her silvered blades, a fierce gleam in her eyes. "With pleasure." The two vampires launched themselves into the horde. Elise moved like a dancer, spinning and slicing through the zombies with her blades, their rotten flesh parting easily under her skill. Niklaus was a force of nature, his claws ripping through the undead with brutal efficiency. He tore off limbs, shattered skulls, and sent bodies flying with inhuman strength. But for every zombie they destroyed, more took their place. They were relentless, a tide of death that showed no fear, no pain, no hesitation. Damn it! Elise hissed, leaping back to Niklaus's side. There's no end to them. Niklaus's eyes darted toward the forest. The zombies weren't coming from nowhere. Something, or someone, was controlling them, driving them toward his territory. His senses honed in on a figure lurking in the distance, standing still among the chaos. It was a man, or at least, what remained of one. Cloaked in tattered robes, its skin was stretched tight over its skeletal frame, its eyes glowing an unnatural green. A necromancer, Niklaus snarled. The figure raised its hands, and the ground beneath the zombies shuddered. More bodies clawed their way up from the earth, joining the horde. The necromancer was raising an army. Elise, keep them busy, Niklaus ordered, his voice sharp. Without waiting for a reply, he surged toward the necromancer. The zombies swarmed to intercept him, but he moved faster, his vampiric speed unmatched. He tore through the ranks, not bothering to fight them. His target was clear. The necromancer saw him coming and raised a bony hand. A wave of energy erupted from its palm, black and pulsating, aimed directly at Niklaus. But the vampire lord was ready. He dodged, disappearing into the shadows before reappearing inches from the necromancer. His claws were out, poised to strike. But the necromancer was faster than it appeared. It dodged to the side, avoiding Niklaus's attack, and lashed out with a dagger made of bone. The blade scraped against Niklaus's chest, but he barely flinched. He lunged again, grabbing the necromancer by the throat. Who sent you? Niklaus demanded, his voice a deadly whisper. The necromancer wheezed, its hollow eyes staring into Niklaus's. The dead rise for no one. Niklaus tightened his grip, his fangs bared. You dare lie to me? But the necromancer only laughed, a harsh, rasping sound. You cannot stop it, vampire. Death is eternal. With a snarl, Niklaus crushed the necromancer's throat, its body crumpling to the ground. He glanced at the battlefield. The zombies still pressed forward, but their movements were less coordinated, more erratic. Without the necromancer to guide them, they were mindless once more. Elise. Niklaus called. She appeared beside him, blood splattered across her pale skin. It's over? For now, Niklaus muttered, his gaze sweeping over the battlefield. The ground was littered with the remains of the undead, their bodies unmoving. But the stench of death still hung heavy in the air. The necromancer was only a pawn. Elise frowned. A pawn for who? I intend to find out. Niklaus turned his eyes toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn began to creep over the trees. The battle had been won, but something darker was coming. He could feel it in his bones. This was only the beginning. As the morning sun rose, casting long shadows across the castle's courtyard, Niklaus and Elise stood amidst the ruins of the zombie horde. The bodies had begun to decompose rapidly, turning to dust under the light of day. But the vampire lord's mind was already elsewhere, racing through the possibilities. Who would dare send an army of the dead against him? And why? Elise sheathed her blades, her expression unreadable. What now? Niklaus's eyes flickered toward the horizon. We prepare. For what? She asked, her voice quieter now, almost uncertain. Niklaus turned to her, his gaze hard. War. Elise nodded, but a shadow of concern passed over her features. And if more of them come? If this was just the first wave? Niklaus smiled, a cold, predatory smile. Then we will crush them. One by one. He started toward the castle, his mind already working through the next steps. Reinforce the defenses. Summon his allies. Search for the one who commanded the necromancer. He had ruled these lands for centuries, and he would not let anyone, or anything, take them from him. As he reached the castle's gate, he paused, glancing back at Elise. The dead may rise, but they are no match for the immortals. Elise smirked. Let them come, then. And with that, Niklaus disappeared into the shadows, leaving the battlefield behind, his mind already sharpening for the next confrontation. He was a lord of the night, a master of death. And he would defend his realm, no matter the cost. The vampire versus zombie war had only just begun.